We are back. It is a post-4th of July edition of Colts Corner with myself, Kevin Bowen. We are 3 weeks and a little bit of change away from Grand Park and the Colts reporting to training camp. I always think of post-4th of July as here we go. Here we go. Those days start to get a bit numbered and summer vacation nearing a close. Eddie Garrison, good afternoon to you, sir. How are you?
Good afternoon, KB. Did you have a good 4th of July weekend? A safe one, too?
I did. Safe, sound, nice. No complaints. A cold beer was not safe, but yeah, outside of that, pretty good. Yeah, took a couple days off late last week, so that was nice. And yeah, recharged the batteries a little bit, and here we go, man. I always feel like it gets a little quicker once we get here through July 4th, but at the same time, I always look forward to this countdown, so we'll have some July content for you each week leading into camp.
You know, one of the things that everyone always looks forward to, Kev, is you get the 53-man roster prediction. You'll have, a depth chart. And what we're talking about on today's podcast, the most indispensable Colts. Now, this is not public on 1075thefan.com. Not too often, Kev, does the podcast audience get a first look, if you will.
They deserve it.
And into some of your content. And, I think online you'll do your top 10. But for the sake of the pod, we're going to just abbreviate this to the top 5.
Well, I think what I've kind of adopted in recent years, Eddie, is I've gone, 1 through 5. And then to me, it's kind of hard to group. After that, I guess I could go full 10. But I've just kind of set other names to consider.
The honorable mention category.
Yeah. Yeah. I was never like high honors. I was always the honor roll back in the day. So, maybe this will be the honor roll if you look at it from that aspect to it. But I always look forward to this list. I think it's highly debatable. I think the key before we get into any sort of ranking, Eddie, is define indispensable, which, again, I know is difficult to maybe provide a ton of black and white on it. But how I view it, I guess, is like this. Certainly not the best players in the team. I'm not ranking the best Colts 1 through 5. There's obviously an element of, yes, you need to be good, and there's certainly talent on this list, but it's a combination of things. Yes, your own individual talent, how important your position is something that I heavily weigh, and then also, what does your depth chart look like, or probably what does it not look like, is kind of how I add up to get the definition of the indispensable nature to it. So I think there will be some names missing from this list that, again, if I were going to rank the top 5 best players, that would be a different list in my eyes. So to me, it is definitely talent. It is certainly the positional importance that you play. And then lastly, I would say, what does your depth chart look like behind you? You add up all of that, and that's how I think you define indispensable.
We are doing the top 5, and starting with number 5, I'll give mine after you share yours, KB. Who is the 5th most indispensable Colt in your eyes on the 26-27 roster?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Latu right here, Eddie. Now, if I said, who needs to have a great Colts season, that could be another list that you do. I've said it before quite often throughout this offseason. I'd have Latu number 2. I'd have him right behind Daniel Jones. So I'm going to have him 5. Again, some are probably going to question it, but that's fine. There are definitely names that I had below him that are better players, but he plays such an important position. I think the Colts are lacking in general proven edge rushers. Like, is Arden Key their most proven edge rusher? I mean, hell, maybe it's Latu. When you start getting the list, it's like, okay, Michael Clemens and George Gumbs Jr. and Caden Curry and Jalen Tuimoloau. I mean, it's probably one of the least proven positions on the team, frankly. And so I think when you factor in the importance, the lack of what is maybe around him, and I've always believed this, I need to have one defensive lineman in my top 5. The one defensive lineman, Eddie, for years has been DeForest Buckner. Narrator's voice or, whatever. Probably not the best podcast tease. I don't have DeForest Buckner on my top 5 this year. The injury situation is just too much. And so that's why I don't have him listed here in my top 5. But yeah, I will go with Latu here to get things started at number 5. Who do you got 5th on your list?
For number 5 for me, KB, I think it's off the beaten path a little bit. I don't think this guy is in your top 5 most indispensable Colts. And for me, I go Cam Bynum here. And I think
Thought about him.
When you talk about the lack of depth behind Cam Bynum, it's question marks.
Yeah.
I mean, we've already have question marks on the starting safety that's next to, Cam Bynum. In this regard, I think he's going to have to become your vocal leader of that unit. And he's kind of like the catcher in Major League Baseball, but on the football field, KB, because he's, the one guy out of the 11 dudes on the field that can see the entirety of the field, and he has to be able to kind of help make up some of the mistakes in front of him. And he's always the last line of defense as well if a guy breaks loose on a tackle. And not to mention the playmaking ability that he brings is unlike some of the other guys that are on the Colts defense. So that's why I go with him at number 5.
Yeah, I definitely thought about him, which, again, initially that was not maybe the forefront of my mind, but as I started to go through the entire depth chart, I was like, boy, you could make a good case for Bynum. And I think you laid it out really well there. I would add this too. Just think about the youth specifically around him, not necessarily behind him on the depth chart. Yes, as you pointed out, depth chart wise, there's hardly anybody. But he could be having a starting, in all likelihood, he might have a starting rookie next to him in Halsey, a starting rookie in quotes, a.k.a. never played a snap in the NFL, at nickel corner and Justin Whalley, and then C.J. Allen. So when you talk about like the middle of your defense, the spine of your defense, second and third levels, and if you include the nickel corner into that spine, there's just a ton of youth, a ton of really first year, even second year guy. I mean, when Hunter Wooler subs onto the field, he's not going to be a guy with a ton of experience. So I think Bynum is a great selection. I think you made a really good case, and I thought about it. He's my honorable mention. He's on my outside looking in. He's in the honor roll with me.
Okay, we'll get to your honorable mentions kind of after we do your top 5, and I think he's on my list. And the guy who is number 4 for you is not on my list. And if I had to guess, that would be one Sauce Gardner.
I go Jonathan Taylor 4.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'm gonna go 4 with Taylor. Again, a best player list. He's higher up, but he's just too dynamic of a skill player, and he's been too durable of a skill player for me not to include him at an off-injured position. I understand the positional value, and that's why he's not higher on this list. And look, the depth chart isn't proven behind him by any means, but I still think he's worthy of consideration. So for me, Taylor has been a debated one over the years for me. How do you view running back? How do you view the offense as a whole? Like, is there enough around him to kind of make up for that? I kind of look at it and think, oh boy, wide receiver's a little bit more lacking this year. So, you have to rely on some skill talent elsewhere. So I have Jonathan Taylor number 4.
This is where I slotted Leatu Latu on my top 5. KB, just because you've already made great points, and the fact that they're banking so much on his development this year and being a breakout candidate amongst other players that are taking the next step in the league, I think is why he's up this high. And you've already highlighted Arden Key, Michael Clemens, Jalen Tuimoloau, and so they're going to have to rely on him as the pass rush production, especially with DeForest Buckner coming off the neck injury. It's a lot of question marks around him, and he's got to be the guy that generates that pass rush.
Yeah. Again, I kind of made my piece about Latu, so I think that is very deserving. You were hinting at number 3 for me. I'm going to go with Sauce Gardner here.
Okay.
Now, I think corner has some potential. I think I've mentioned that before. I do think it's a position group, and if you want to throw the whole DB room in there with Bynum, there could be some high-end eliteness to it, but I can't ignore Travaris Ward's situation, and I can't ignore Justin Whalley's youth. Anytime you make a trade the magnitude of the Gardner trade, he better be on your indispensable list. Like, if he doesn't matter that much, then why is he on there?
True.
Like, why do you make the trade in the first place? So he needs to be a stud, point blank period. I mean, just flat out. He needs to be probably one of the best defensive players in the league, frankly. But at the very least, he's got to be one of the best cornerbacks in the league. So Sauce Gardner, number 3.
Now, let me ask you this. Why do you go with Sauce Gardner over Travarius Mooney Ward for the indispensable list here?
Because Sauce is better. And
Agreed.
so, again, this is where some of the talent comes into play, too. I understand, like, Mooney matters, but still, there is an element of, like, Sauce Gardner is the more recent, I think, high-level player. Not that, Mooney, I actually thought Mooney was a little harsh on his own game last year. I actually thought Mooney was decent to better than decent when he was out there. But that's where the separation occurs for me of, not that you have great cornerback depth, to be clear, but to me, Sauce is the one that you got to put on the list above Mooney. If you're making it just appear like most approved list, well, I mean, Sauce got a lot to prove too, just based off the trade. But, Mooney is in a different category of proving it. To me, proving it's like financially, do you need to prove it? Injury-wise, you need to prove it. Draft pick status, all those things.
Now, finally, did the thought of someone else in that cornerback room pop into your mind? Not being either of those two, and it's going to be the guy who will be making his NFL debut, hopefully, week number 1, whenever the season comes around, and Justin Wally, just because of the fact they're relying on him to replace Kenny Moore as that nickelback slot corner. And additionally, if one of the two guys that we just talked about in Sauce Gardner or Mooney Ward goes down, ultimately, it sounds like he would be the guy that would just slot from, nickelback to outside corner.
See, this is where I think it gets into the gray area, Eddie, and how we define indispensable. Like, to me, when you mention Mooney or you mention Justin Wally, that is where the most to prove comes into play. Josh Downs in a contract year, for example, would be one that would kind of fall into that category. Whereas indispensable, I still have to have talent. And again, all these players have talent. I want to make that clear, but there still is have you been a good football player in the NFL? Are you a good to great football player in the NFL? And so that's where, to me, yes, Mooney's got stuff to prove. Wally has stuff to prove. And there is an indispensability to their nature. Like, for example, a question I have entering training camp, what is the depth at nickel corner? Again, I know it might be a little thing, but you do have a guy coming off a torn ACL in there. So, for me, it is Sauce at number 3.
For number 3, for me, it's Jonathan Taylor, and it's because of the lack of, talent, not really talent, but production, I should say, proven production behind him. And it's no secret how dynamic he makes that Colts offense and how he makes that thing run. He's kind of like the engine, for the lack of a better phrasing, because you look at how the team performed prior to Daniel Jones going down with that torn Achilles. Their success came from Jonathan Taylor. And then once Daniel Jones goes down, the production of Jonathan Taylor dips. Thus, the offensive production kind of sputters. And it just kind of relies on, other guys trying to step up and make plays. And, last year when you didn't have the quarterback, it just had a result on everyone else.
Well, when you say quarterback, number 2 for me is one, Daniel Jones. And again, positional importance. It's a bad thing, Eddie, if your quarterback is not on this list. I don't think your depth chart can be good enough for your quarterback not to be on any list. And I'm talking about the 32 teams across the NFL. So for me, Daniel Jones is on there. Again, is he one of the best Colts? No. But, let's not ignore what he did do last year in his 2 months of playing. I just think there's too much volatility behind him. Leonard and Anthony Richardson, I don't think it's the worst number 2 and 3 quarterback rooms by any means in the NFL, but there's just boom or bust would be a compliment, and it's probably going to be more bust than boom, with either of those two guys, really. So I've got Daniel Jones at 2. Again, quarterback, and then just the volatility behind him.
Yeah, we have the same players in 1 and 2, but I think we just have them slotted differently. Number 2 for me, that's Bernhard Raimann, the left tackle. We talk about depth. There's no depth behind him, and he has just been so lock, stock, and ready and available and steady, ever since he was drafted pretty much for Chris Ballard. And he has been one of the big smashing hits that Ballard and company in development as well. I
think he's the best Ballard draft pick.
Really? You put him over Taylor?
Well,
just because of the positional value?
Yeah, if you can find your long-term left tackle in the middle of round 3?
Yeah.
some might say Taylor, of course. Some might say Darius Leonard, but yeah. I've got Ryman 1, I guess, not to, peek behind the curtain here and go ahead and reveal. I just think there's a domino effect to losing him. I'm not sure how many positions on the field, Eddie, there's a true domino effect.
Yeah.
Of if said player is not there, it could impact this other position greatly. And again, if Ryman is not there, you are susceptible on the blind side of an oft-injured quarterback who's trying to come back from a torn Achilles in 10 months, 9 months, whatever it is. You add up all of that, it's less than ideal. So, to me, Ryman, and I've probably long been a believer in, like, Anthony Costanzo was my number 1 for several years, dating back to, when I started to do this list. So I had Ryman as number 1 on my list. So again, 1 through 5, Bernhard Ryman, Daniel Jones, Sauce Gardner, Jonathan Taylor, Latu for me.
Yeah, for me, the 5 is 1 through 5. Daniel Jones, because we mentioned it, Kev, just how the offense just kind of went off the rails whenever he tore his Achilles last year down there in Jacksonville. Number 2, Bernhard Ryman. 3, Jonathan Taylor. 4, Latu. 5, Cam Bynum. Now let's get into the honorable mention category. You mentioned Cam Bynum was one of those in this category, Kev. Who were some of the other names that you considered that just missed the cut list?
Well, first one sent home, if you will, was Alec Pierce. It's not always that I've had receiver kind of in that light, but I just think, given the nature of the depth chart of that room, given his uniqueness skill set wise, he's not like, if for some reason you think Deion Burks can be something in the NFL, all right, you might say, okay, Josh Downs, you're not as important. Again, I think it's probably a ludicrous thought to have on July 6th, but nonetheless, to me, there's just no one like Pierce. Certainly on this team, and frankly, I would say largely around the NFL. So I had Pierce next up. I went with Tyler Warren as well. Again, tight end, I don't necessarily think like positional value-wise, it's massive, but if you have one that is a budding star, he could very quickly be on the top 5 of said list. Bynum was one. I mentioned Buckner as a guy that I just think his injury situation, I couldn't put him top 5. And then I will say Quentin Nelson, because obviously, Eddie, if you said top 5 most accomplished Colts, however you want to look at it, Nelson is easily one of them, if not the one. But it's just, there's no way for me to say this and it's sounding like a slight at Quentin Nelson, because it shouldn't be. He's been an extraordinary player, but he's been a Hall of Fame guard, and where's the team success?
Yeah.
Now, again, some might say, well, if you didn't have him, maybe the team success would be even worse. Okay, yeah, that's I can listen to that debate. That's fine. But again, it's a guard. And I guess if you want to look at it, didn't you just draft a guard in round 3 or round 4, wherever Jalen Farmer was? So, maybe Matt Gonzalez and Jalen Farmer, you actually have some depth there versus tackle, I guess, is what I'm getting at. You have a little bit of draft capital into that group there. So those are a few others. Any others that you debated?
My honorable mentions were Gardner, Pierce, Warren, Nelson, and then I think this is a interesting one to debate. CJ Allen.
Yeah.
Even though he hasn't played it down yet.
Talk to me a little bit more. Yeah.
I mean, it's already been noted the amount of turnover in the linebacker room, and he's already going to be the guy that's replacing a former All-Pro and Zaire Franklin, who's got to bark out the signals and be the green dot. He's got to be the one communicating with Lou Anarumo. And behind him is Austin Najaki, a guy who nobody knows anything about other than how to say his name.
Well, hell, I mean, behind him might even be like Bryce Betcher, might be another rookie.
Right.
I think that's a fair point that you make there. He was one that it's just so hard for me to have a rookie, on that list there. So
what's it say that we're debating about like 5 different guys to make the cut, and it's not really that clear for who gets the 3 or not 3 but 4 or 5 in the most indispensable list. What's that say about the roster?
Yeah, I mean,
that there's a lot to prove, and you don't really know who's indispensable and who's got a lot to prove in that regard.
See, I think you're sniffing around the right tree there. Like I'll do, and I haven't really thought about the most approved list, to be honest with you, yet. I'm still kind of making my way through I just started my 53 Colts questions that I posted
let's go.
a few days before training camp each year. I'm stuck. I need 5 more. I'm stuck. I got to 48 and then I finally hit a wall and decided to,
we can discuss after the pod.
Take it back. Say, okay, thank you for that. The most to prove, I think, is fascinating. Fascinating. And, it's interesting. We had a listener, AJ, reach out to me on Instagram. It was like, in referencing last week's pod, for those that missed it, traveling for the holiday, whatever, just tired of me and you talking and decided not to listen to it. We went over those kind of 50-50 bets. You got to hit on about 8 or 9, or you have about 10 of these 50-50 bets. You need to hit on, probably 7 or 8 of them to have a successful season. And again, you can weigh your own opinion on how 50-50 a lot of these bets are. But yeah, I do think this season is probably rooted in more of the most to prove sort of categories. And, like Daniel Jones is a perfect example of a player that has a ton to prove here on multiple levels. Because, when I hear prove, to go back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier in the pod, there's a financial component to it. There's a health component to it. And then also, what has the team invested in you? Like Sauce Gardner.
Yeah.
Sauce has done a lot in the NFL. But a team just said you're worth 2 first-round picks plus an AD Mitchell. That's a lot for another team to say that about you. Daniel Jones and Alec Pierce would fall into the financial element to it there. So I don't know. I don't know if we'll get to a most to prove. I'm trying to think what else we'll do here in July, but maybe we'll save that for closer to camp.
Let's dive into Twitter questions for today. Let's start with Isaac, because you mentioned Deion Burks. And this question from Isaac: what role do you think Deion Burks can play? Do you think the criticism that he is another Josh Downs is warranted, or is that just because of his height?
Well, I think it's a little. I understand the question. I think it's a little slap in the face at Josh Downs. Boy, if you can find the Josh Downs equivalent and pick 254 of the NFL draft, sign me up. I think you'd happily take a duplicate of Josh Downs. I understand what Isaac's saying. It's a little weird, a guy drafted 4 rounds later, because the Colts actually think he can play bigger than his size. If you saw the combine numbers, Eddie, he was big time on the bench press. They feel like there's a little bit more of an outside film to him in college than maybe most you would think of with his height and weight. Now, not a ton in the spring from him. I think I mentioned to you, there's one day we were out there for minicamp, and it was a bit of a circus, him fielding punts, and I do think that could be a really important element for him in making the team and cementing himself on the roster. But I'm definitely eager to see more in camp. But I'm not in the I get it. Right after the draft occurred, there was a lot of chatter about, all right, why was he there? Why did he fall? This is a steal. And I understand that. I watched him enough in college to also think that when he was initially drafted, but I think the early returns are a bit tempered on Deion Burks, and we'll see how, training camp unfolds here. It is probably worth noting Downs in a contract year. But the Colts are also, I guess I shouldn't assume anything, but if this regime is back, Chris Ballard loves himself some Joshua Downs.
Yes, he certainly does. And you're doing a Scouts Take series that you do every single year on 1075thefan.com. And coming up next, I believe, is Caden Curry. And following that will be Deion Burks at some point.
Indeed. Yeah, we are on to the day 3, I guess. Yeah, day 3 of the draft here this week. So, yeah, George Gumbs Jr. was first up. Yeah, Caden Curry will be tomorrow, and we'll hit the 2 7th-rounders to round things out.
And this question is from Jake. He said he was listening to the morning show last week and brought up how the fact that Chris Ballard's first-round draft pick history has been hit or miss. And so Jake's question is this. How do you guys rank the first-round draft pick history for Chris Ballard? This is Jake's rankings. He's curious for your thoughts, Kevin. Number 1 is Tyler Warren. Quentin Nelson, number 2. 3, Leatu Latu, because of positional value. 4, the 2019 trade that got the Indianapolis Colts Michael Pittman Jr. in 2020. Malik Hooker is number 5. Kwity Paye, 6. The 2022 trade involving Carson Wentz is number 7. Anthony Richardson Sr., number 8. And last, number 9, the 2020 trade for DeForest Buckner post Andrew Luck retiring. Had to do everything to get a quarterback, especially considering 3 in the top 50 picks. Jake did note that he did leave out the 26 draft just because he's over Chris Ballard era. Thanks for the pod and love listening to you guys.
Jake, thank you for that. It's a good little summer pod. Well, I guess my initial thought is this. I understand ranking 2020 ninth, but that was a trade that still netted DeForest Buckner. Now, I've probably been a broken record over the years. Yes, Jake and I are on the same wavelength. At that point, you do everything in your manner to draft a quarterback, certainly. But you still did get a really quality player in return in Buckner there. So, I can't put that year below Richardson or maybe even below Wentz there. Who was better, Kwity Paye or Malik Hooker? You factor in injuries.
Oh, boy. That's like asking me if I like a warm milk or hot milk.
Stop. They're not that bad. Come on now. That was uncalled
No,
for.
I'm just saying you're splitting hairs.
By the way, do you think the hot dog eating contest is disgusting? I think it's beautiful. I think it's poetry. I think it's Michelangelo. I think it's gorgeous. I think it's the modern day swimsuit SI edition.
I think it's great. And especially seeing the different types of wiener consumption styles.
Well, that's one way to put it, for sure. Yeah. Man, I know some people in my family thought it was gross.
Some people raw dogging it and then put in the bun after.
Yeah. I got it, man. I got it. Yeah, thank you. 2019 trade, nets you Pittman. Yeah, Latu at 3. Warren 2. Nelson's got to be 1, right? Nelson's above Warren. We're just 1 year into the Warren thing. So I would say Nelson 1. Latu. Oh, boy, Warren 2. Boy, it's such a steep drop from 2 to anything else. Really steep drop. And I think, you can look at this one of two ways. Some of the trading out or trading back in round 1, it has netted you some other stuff that has been beneficial. But, there is a financial element, and this kind of gets in the Sauce Gardner trade a little bit here of boy, when you do trade away your first round picks, I know it's heavily debated right now in the NBA. You're seeing now NBA first round picks have some more gold to it because of the new lottery rules where you don't have to, you could be in the middle of round 1 standings wise and get a top 3 pick or have as good of odds, I should say, as any other team. But, there is that financial element of boom, team option can be really attractive. To have a player team control for, 5 years. I get that if that player is a quality player, it takes a jump there in year 5, but still that could be huge for you. So, I would put 2020 draft higher, the trade for Buckner. I'd probably flop Nelson and Warren, but outside of that, I think he's pretty much good. It's just such a steep drop from 2 to everything else.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
And if you did this next year, you would want Latu to be, hell, I think you want Latu above Warren.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Positional value, right, Kev?
Right. Preach it.
Halfway through the Twitter question section for today's podcast. This one is from John. And Kevin, you may get a little aroused with this one.
Oh, boy. Well, if your wiener description didn't do it a few minutes ago, I'm sure this will.
Hypothetically, for next season, the Colts finish 11-6, make the playoffs, and lose in the wild card round. Notre Dame wins the national championship and C.J. Carr wins the Heisman. Assuming C.J. Carr declares for the draft and goes top 5, what would you think the Colts would give up to ensure they are able to draft C.J. Carr? How many players or picks or a combination of the two would it take to secure the Colts a quarterback of the future?
He had me at Notre Dame winning a national title.
I know.
Gosh. I know. I didn't think midnight would be reached at this hour of the day, but I think it has. Well, boy, what a wild hypothetical here. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think this thought has not crossed my mind. Well, if I'm really going to dissect CJ Carr for a second, Eddie, and I would call him a little bit more CJ Stroud to his game. I think something CJ Carr needs to prove to NFL scouts is there the creator in him? Are you a playmaker? as well. Or, in Stroud's case, I think Stroud has earned the label and, ball placement specialist and all that we heard. Stroud, I feel like there's got to be a lot healthy around him for him to really be at his best, which, I get there's a kind of an elementary statement to talk about quarterbacks in that light. But when it gets murky and ugly, is Carr going to make some of those plays? The non-whiteboard plays. That would be a question that I would have. I also think it's worth noting to John here, as much as I love Notre Dame, as much as, well, I shouldn't say that. I love Notre Dame just behind my 3 children. The 2027 draft is supposed to be pretty good at quarterback.
Now, what about Matty?
Well, yeah, of course. I thought that was a given, so I didn't need to say that. The 2027 draft class is supposed to be pretty good at quarterback. So, that is going to weigh into, I think, what a trade looked like. Now, what would a trade look like under John's hypothetical? Oh, my gosh. I mean, if you were moving from, so he says the Colts finish 11-6.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got them drafting, 23 overall?
Somewhere around there, considering they don't have their pick.
Right, so that would go to the Jets. That means play that out in the second round. So then they're in the, back third of round 2. So you're not drafting for the first 48 some spots.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, plug that into your trade value machine. I mean, you'd be giving up 28, 29. If you're moving, does he say how far they're moving up here?
Top 5.
Yeah, I mean, if you're moving to top 5, I mean, 28, 29, I would say at least a marquee player. I mean, what? You gave up 28 and 29 or you gave up 2 first-round picks plus A.D. Mitchell for Sauce Gardner.
Yeah.
I just, there's no trade in my mind, John, that I think would necessarily make sense. Plus, if you're doing all this here, aren't you just rolling with Daniel Jones? Right?
I would, yeah.
I mean, are you running it back 11-6?
Considering it's a much more difficult schedule than a year ago.
Yeah, I would say that you're probably just running it back. But if you want me to play this hypothetical out, yeah, I mean, you would multiple first, second round picks. I mean, it would be a huge trade package. It'd probably be one of the more unprecedented trades in NFL history. I mean, think back to what the Texans gave up to go from. Remember, the Texans went from, they drafted Stroud at 2. Can you look that up for me, Eddie? What did the Texans trade to get Will Anderson Jr.? I want to say they had their 12th overall pick that year. So they took Stroud 2. Then what did they trade to get back up to 3?
They traded with Arizona, pick 12, pick 33,
okay, so
a first-round pick in 24,
slow
and
down,
a third-round pick in 24.
12 overall?
Yep.
33 overall?
Yep. A first in 24 and a third in 24.
I mean, think about that. They gave up the 12th pick, next year's first. They also gave up the first pick in round 2. That's 33.
And a future third in connection for the third overall pick and a later 4th.
Yeah, and let's say the 3rd and the 4th wash out. I mean, that's to move up 9 spots in round 1. You're asking the Colts to move up 50-some spots, 45 spots. Yeah, John, that is that's a wild hypothetical.
Last Twitter question is from Sam. As always, feel free to tweet these to @KBowen1070 or myself @EddieGarrison_.
Throw them in the DMs too. If you want.
That's what I should have said. Throw them in the DMs. Slide into the DMs, KB.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, yeah.
This is from Sam. We all know that general managers think what they're doing is best for the team. Ryan Grigson thought not getting quality inside line help when the Colts had Andrew Luck until it was almost too late was best for the team. Chris Ballard delayed finding a franchise quarterback after Luck retired and refused to spend any money on free agents for a long time because he thought it was best for the team. So let's say that Carly Ursay-Gordon, while she still respects and supports Ballard, wanted to bring in outside counsel and she offered you the job. The job would allow you access to all practices, any team meetings, insight, and input on all player moves, drafting, and contracts. You would have a 1-year contract with your option to renew it with an increase in pay. Your opinions must be taken seriously by the coaches. You're acting as Carly Ursay-Gordon's voice in the building. By the way, your compensation would be quite a bit more than you're making now. The condition, you would not be allowed to discuss the Colts if you decide to keep your other jobs. You can talk football and any other sport, but no Colts talk. Would you take the job?
Wow.
The creative minds on some of our listeners.
I'll tell you what. You got some sharp brains, to say the least here. By the way, shout out. You see Ryan Grigson back to Cleveland?
I did see that.
Yeah, so
I did see that.
Minnesota for a couple years. He goes back with old Andrew Berry there. Boy, Andrew Berry's a bit of a run there in Cleveland. I mean, I will say this. Sam had me for a lot of this, but then when he throws in the caveat of I would not be allowed to discuss the Colts if I decide to keep my other jobs. You can talk football in other sport, but no Colts talk. Sorry to break it to Sam, but without Colts, Eddie, we probably don't have these jobs. So that would be a big issue here. I do say this in all seriousness about working like in the NFL, and especially that side of the NFL. Like if you work in the football operations department, that NFL grind is no joke. No joke. I mean, breaking news, working in pro sports is a grind. I mean, you are about as close to 7 days a week starting July 20th as you can imagine. And like even in the off season, man, it's still pretty like 9 to 5-y. There's a little bit of downtime and breaks, and you know, they do get a little bit of summer vacation here, but boy, I kind of like what I'm doing, Sam. And if I can't necessarily come back to this, then I'm a little nervous for that. I think there's an element of like, I'd be curious if you worked one of those jobs, Eddie, like how much you would feel the burning competition desire. You know, didn't we kind of get in this debate with Peyton Manning a lot? Oh, Peyton could never be a GM because he would want to be in full control, you know?
Yeah.
And that would be hard for him to, like, I love competition. Like, I love playing golf for whatever sort of value you want to define. I love just playing golf by myself and competing against the golf course. And, you know, I love playing a game of cards, or if I wasn't afraid of getting hurt, I'd love to play pickup basketball. You know, just like things like that, of that sort of competition element, I do think would be cool. Like the winning and losing element. You know, it can be pretty morgue-like, I would think, on a Monday, frankly, after a loss or things like that. And sure, I mean, there's obviously a coolness factor to what Sam lays out, like some of the conversations that you're privy to, some of those sorts of things. But man, I love doing what I'm doing. So
I'm glad you love what you're doing, KB.
I'm going to bow out. The alarm didn't work this morning.
I heard about that.
Yeah. Boy, I panicked. 6:32. All of a sudden, I kind of slammed my phone on the ground, not like on accident. And I'm like, oh man, that's a lot of light coming in this room right now. You better believe I had a quick panic here. So let's just say hygiene took a little bit of a backseat this morning.
Wait, so did you wake up on your own? Did Maddie Bowen wake you up?
No,
like,
but
hey.
which is weird because I feel like usually she's got the 6:30 alarm right after that. So.
Did Maddie forget to turn hers back on?
I don't know. It was one of those things where I told my nephew about that 82-0 game.
Oh.
And so he was kind of playing with my phone this week, and I'm curious if somehow he turned off the alarm, but I think I'm back. I think I'm good to go for tomorrow there. That'd be the kiss of death, though. I've made fun of Jake Query so much for oversleeping that it's bound to happen to me pretty soon here. Those are some excellent Twitter questions. Again, DM myself, DM Eddie. We'll continue to throw those on here throughout the summer, man. And we are 3 weeks away. You got anything else?
I got nothing else. Looking forward to all the content on 107.5 The Fan.
As Eddie said, Scouts Take up on the website. I know when the draft rolls around each year, there's so much draft content right when the draft's done. GM, head coach, player, that it's great when the Colts area scouts chat with us, but I also feel like it can kind of get lost in the shuffle. So I've decided a few years ago, I'm like, let's save these for kind of the middle of the summer when it's a little quieter. There still is intrigue about who the rookies are. It's kind of a nice refresher, I think, for a lot of people. So making my way kind of halfway through the draft class. That's up on 107.5 The Fan Thank you as always for listening to this. Hope you had a great and a safe 4th of July. We'll chat with you coming up next week. Colts Corner with Kevin Bowen signing off.